Hey everybody, this is Nem. This is an unusual video. I don't normally do this because it's a rather large risk, I guess, to voice an opinion on a topic you're not directly related to, um, especially on the internet where it's easy to misunderstand or you are limited in how much you can speak and how much you can clarify because it's not a real-time conversation. So you can say something and people will interpret like all of the things you haven't said, you know what I mean? As like intentionally agreeing with something maybe you don't agree with, or kind of leaves room for interpretation that might skew or paint you in a light that's not wholly accurate. And that's always been the struggle of the internet, you know. But as far as Final Fantasy 14 goes right now, there's like a big drama right now, and there's just so much vitriol and toxicity on lots of sides, and there's a lot of behaviors that I've been just kind of looking a little bit at the psychology of it all, looking at like why people are replying the way that they are, and trying to understand like what the big problem points are for that, um, as far as this drama goes. So I want to just put my thoughts out there and have a conversation as close as you can about that, because it's interesting. It's interesting what's happening, and it's interesting how people are kind of upset. Some things are definitely worth being upset about, and I think other things are mostly due to misinterpretations or just feeling maybe invalidated in a way due to um, the way some things are said, right? So let's kind of break into it. So a top world first raider for years kind of came out and just made like a generic statement. And that generic statement ended up being that they're confused why more uh, world first races aren't more diverse, and that it would be cool, but they don't know how to get there. And then a lot of women came out and said the reason why it's not more diverse is because of people like you, claiming like a lot of drama. And some of it was down to like cheating in relationship accusations, and some of it was related to um, sexual harassment accusations, and then some of it was related to like misogyny and bigotry. And so I want to outline the overlying conversation, right? So if you in Final Fantasy, there's world first raiders, right? They're pushing to be the top players, the fastest, most dedicated, putting everything aside to just grind. Keeping in mind, Final Fantasy 14 is not a terribly difficult game, and world first raiders understand this, right? So these are people who are putting everything in their life aside and just degenning super hard to race to see who can get there first. And really, the skill expression comes into how fast you as a group can learn mechanics and then execute on them faster than everybody else. And really, the biggest hurdle in that challenge comes from having to endure like 16 to 20-hour days of raiding every single day for sometimes 3 days, sometimes 5 days, sometimes a week. Uh, and for anyone who's never really held down like a traditional job where you might have to put in like that 120-hour week, like it's a huge mental strain, just to kind of paint that picture for you. And so having that mental endurance to be able to get through that, knowing that like all you want to do is go to sleep, all you want to go do is eat when you want to eat, all you want to go do is rest your eyes, and you can't do any of that. So world first rating is kind of brutal in that sense that like it's a job at that point. It's beyond a job. It's like one of the most grueling overtime heavy jobs that you probably ever worked. The only difference is you're playing a video game and you're changing something that you really love, and you're turning it into something that you no longer love for a short amount of time. It's like a musician, playing an instrument. You practice until it's perfect, and that means you practice until it's not fun anymore. It's not fun to do this. I'm not enjoying playing music like I used to. I'm not enjoying like the new creativity because I'm doing the same practices over and over and over again. And every time I make a mistake, I feel like I've lost progress and have to rebuild myself and rebuild, my attitude and my confidence. It's the same thing for world first rating. And they're saying, why don't we have more women and like, people of color and like trans people and all of that in the world first rating scene? And the the overwhelming response from a logic point of view, because we have two arguments. We have the emotional response and we have the logic response, and neither one is wrong. Um, but what we have to remember when it comes to a conversation like this, you can't go full logic, because if you go full logic in any conversation, you become like a robot, like a calculating computer. Like, yeah, you might be right about some things, but you become disconnected, you become kind of isolating, and people don't feel connected to you. So even if you're accurate, people aren't going to be happy about it. And so if you value accuracy above all else, like just dealing with reality, the facts, the way it is, um, you know, then yeah, you can get that point, but just know that people aren't going to be happy about it because they don't want to just have cold hard facts and they don't want to accept reality. They want to change reality, and that's where the emotions come in. And you can't just be full emotions either, because if you go full emotions, it's just completely misguided, off the rails. It doesn't get anything done. It doesn't serve a purpose. You're just being emotional to be emotional, and emotions are great. It's how we connect and feel seen and understand issues. But you have to pair both of these approaches together to get like that actual solution or that actual understanding of each other. And that's what we're missing here. So we can get into the nitty gritty here, and a lot of what I might say is going to kind of cause some issues in the 14 community, because the reality is for the Final Fantasy 14 community, it's a very cute game and it's attracted a lot of people who like cute things, that normally wouldn't be playing video games or that have more hardcore elements to it, like a permadeath MMO, or like a ranked online multiplayer shooter, something like that, where like it's not really about cute, it's about performance, and it's about nothing but performance, right? So world first rating is about nothing but performance. And ultimately, that means people sacrifice every other element, right? It's not about being friends. It's not about being nice to each other. It's about doing a job. And ultimately, that kind of shifts the context, because if you haven't been in that kind of environment before, it's shocking. Like it'll be shocking to you, like what's acceptable, what's not. And the way you need to think about these things is like working a job, right? A lot of people have had jobs that they depended on. Like you're working for your paycheck, right? And you need that paycheck to survive. Like you are desperate for the job you have. You need to hang on to that job to take care of yourself or take care of your family. People are depending on you, right? And if you mess it up, if you go like 2 weeks without that job and you have to find a new job, maybe that's enough to the point where someone you love goes without medicine, or they go without food, or they go out without a place to live. Like it's that tight, right? And when people are in those situations, sometimes you have to work with people where you don't agree with what they say and you know it shouldn't be that way, but you have to accept that the process is so imperfect for changing it that if you rock that boat, you risk hurting the people you care about or risk the job getting done. And so the military handles this in a very interesting and honestly insightful way, in that the team comes together. It's like this approach. The team comes together for the sake of the mission, right? The mission needs to get done, because if you get distracted by everything else, the mission will not get done. It'll be compromised. And when you're dealing with life-threatening situations like the military does, I mean, those are pretty bad consequences. Imagine like your boss getting you killed because they were upset about something like ephemeral. You know what I mean? So when it comes to world first rating, like they do have that mentality of like, I'm working a job and I don't really care about, like I just need to get this done so I can rest. So if someone's saying something I don't really agree with, like I don't have the mental bandwidth to like try and fix every person or fight every like moral battle with them, because ultimately this is temporary. I can't be responsible for everyone that I play this game with. I just need to get my mission done. You know what I mean? And that's like a survival mechanism, and it happens in the workplace, and it happens in combat and in the military, and it happens in raiding, right? No, rating is not like try not to misunderstand me here. Like give me the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying that rating is like being in the military or in combat, and I'm not saying, that it's the equivalent of having to work a job for a paycheck for your family's survival. What I am saying is that there's bleed over into the mentality and into the emotional state that you get into, and the physical state of exhaustion, like that, those things happen in raiding as well, where you're sitting at your computer for 20 hours a day trying to solve complex problems, trying to execute at a high level over and over and over and over again. You're gonna have fatigue set in, right? And so what's ended up happening is that we're looking at the world first rating community, and we're saying things like it shouldn't be this way, right? It shouldn't be that people are allowed to say things and do things that I don't agree with because it's harmful to others. And I would say that like most normal people are going to agree with you that it shouldn't be that way. That's the emotional argument. It shouldn't be this way. And yeah, I mean, of course, like we don't want it this way, right? And then other people are going to say, but also you have to grow a thick skin. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? So let's take a look at some tweets, and we'll address some controversial ones. So Spudsy here, Spudsy Bud says, in relation to like sexual assault and things like that, it's not always possible to get solid proof. I don't have solid proof that I was sexually assaulted, so does that make my word mean nothing, right? You can't always record and get pictures of it because you don't know when it's going to happen. And this is a real problem, right? This is a real problem because in how this relates to world first rating is they're saying a lot of women don't get into world first rating because they get harassed, um, they get mistreated, and they don't feel comfortable in the environments with those types of people. And Xenos Vex here is saying, unfortunately, that's life. You don't always have proof in the courts and out. That's why it's always important to try and protect yourself as best you can at all times. Liars and false accusations have ruined it for everyone. So what he's saying here is that unfortunately, he's like, yeah, it sucks that this is how bad things have gotten to the point where like you can't trust people's word because a lot of people have been hurt by liars, false accusations, sending people to jail for years, things like that, where it's like if you just believe everyone based on their word, you end up believing a lot of lies or half truths or misinterpretations of situations, and social media has shown that to us that these are just strangers on the internet saying things, and you don't really know them as well as you might think. And as much as you want to believe every person, you're going to end up not getting to that logic side, that accurate end goal of being just and being fair and getting justice for whoever was wronged. If you just believe everyone, you end up not getting there. We end up with the reality of like some people being put in jail when they didn't do anything wrong, right? We have that like actual documented in at least Western culture history, where now we've learned, oh shit, we gotta be careful because like actually this guy didn't do anything wrong, and you find the proof like 10 years later and they get out of jail, and it's like you can't bring back 10 years of that person's life because they were in jail wrongfully accused. You can't get it back. And then on the other side, like if you don't listen to people when they say something bad happened to them, you also run the gambit of something bad happened to this person, and we didn't find a way to listen and believe them because they didn't have proof, and that's also a problem. So it's not a perfect solution either way, and that's why you have people on both sides of the fence here going like this is the reality versus these are my emotions. Like I want to be heard, I want to be believed, and absolutely you should be. But unfortunately the reality, right? Not the what we want it to be, not what it should be, but just this is how it works, and if you want to survive in this system, you have to understand that this is how people act and this is what's happened. So unfortunately, like you can't believe everyone just based off their word. That's why it's important to surround yourself with like an inner circle or like a support system, people who know who you are, who know you're honest to them and know that they can support and protect you as best they can. So that when something happens, you have a lot of people who can vouch for your character and say, I know this person. I know how they look at situations. I know that what they are saying is emphatically true. You know what I mean? So that then if you need people outside that circle to actually listen to you, like you have this bigger voice. And it sucks that that's the way. Nobody wants it to be this way, right? This is just where Western society has kind of gotten to. No one's sitting here saying like just deal with it. They're saying like Xenosys Vex is completely on the side of listen, you got to do the best you can because no one's going to protect you but yourself. And that's a lesson that like I myself and and a lot of people in my age group and I would say who grew up the same way that I did, like we've had to learn that lesson the hard way. You know what I mean? Where like you get screwed in a lot of ways in life, and no one believes you, no one listens to your story. And I'm not talking about sexual assault, but for other things in life, right? Um, you know, whether it's legal issues or work issues or family issues or whatever, like nobody listens to you, nobody believes you, nobody cares. So the point when you get wronged, you actually learn like I just got fucked, I just got screwed, and there's nothing I can do about it, and no one believes me. What do I do in those situations? And that's why I think Xenosys Vex here is saying like it's just a reality. Like this happens to us all, not to this sexual assault degree, but this reality of like people aren't going to believe you, and if you don't have proof, like you can't just lock someone away. You can't just like destroy someone's life based on words because we've done that before. And a lot of innocent people got hurt for a very long amount of time based on many different factors. We have cases of it being like the victim literally fabricated as a trauma response the entire situation. We've had uh, instances, very few, please don't misinterpret me, but we've had very few instances of just straight up lies just to try and attack someone or hurt someone. Some have sought benefits in other ways. And while these are minority cases, right, um, they are things that we have to think about. Is it worth risking like innocent people being put away or hurt, and for some people it's worth the risk, and for some people it's not. And understanding those like differences is really important because it's not that like people like Xenosys Vex aren't against people who got sexually assaulted being listened to. He's just saying like I've had to learn this lesson and other things. It probably applies here too, that unfortunately without proof people's hands are kind of tied, and we don't want their hands to be tied, right? But you're damned if you do and damned if you don't type situations. If you act on it, right, you do the wrong thing. If you just believe them and trust that everything they're saying is actually true and you act on that, you end up doing the wrong thing. And if you don't believe them and you don't listen to them, you end up doing the wrong thing. It's a hard situation. That's what people are saying. And that's why like you get these comments like, I genuinely hope he chokes, but like not in a cool way. It's like, I think you just don't understand where he's coming from or the experience that comes with his words. If you don't have that experience, if you haven't had to learn that lesson for yourself, his words are going to sound foreign, jaded, disconnected, not cool. You know what I mean? But when you have that experience and have the context behind the words, you realize like what they're saying makes a lot of sense. They're in no way, like he literally uses like sympathetic terminology here. Unfortunately, that means I don't agree with this. I don't like that it's this way. That's what that means. You don't. Unfortunately, that's life. You need proof. That's life, and you don't always have proof. That's the problem. He acknowledges the problem. He doesn't like the problem, right? But that's the reality. People get screwed in life, and we don't live in a perfect system. We don't live in a perfect society where everyone tells the truth. We don't have a fair and just world, and that sucks. What can we do about that? Well, this is just a streamer on the internet. So what can this one guy do? I mean, and what is he obligated to do as a person more than any other person? Those are all, other debates to have, but this person is in no position to change the entire world we can at least agree on. And so what he's saying is this situation sucks, and some liars and false accusations have ruined the safety and reliability and trust of everyone. And that's completely true, right? Like when you have a society where like you understand that people abuse the system ends up not working as well. And how you fix that is an age-old question. So that's one tweet that I thought was interesting when it comes to this situation, because ultimately what we're looking at is Twitter hate mobbing on a person with a lot of accusations, and we can't confirm or deny everything. Now, a lot of people are confirming a lot of things, and like some women are saying like I got this and I got that, and a lot of people like I was there, and you have witnesses, right? You have which is fantastic. You know what I mean? Which is how our like justice and court system kind of works. So it's great. It's good, but some things are just being said, and you can't tell. It's just a Twitter post from a random account. You don't know this person, and so there's a lot of gray area, right? And that's kind of what people are talking about here. There's some more tweets in response to that. It's really depressing to watch all of the top male content creators for 14 immediately getting defensive and casting aspirations to any woman voicing their concerns and experiences. Men protect men no matter what. I think this is a really silly take as well because again, in response to seeing male creators in this like performance based environment where yes, you end up rating with people you don't agree with or don't like, but you say it's temporary and you're not really like you don't agree with it, but you have a mission to do and you have to just accomplish the mission no matter what is the mindset to get yourself some rest, to get yourself out of that, right? And there's a lot of benefits to doing it and blah 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 blah. And that's not going to be for everyone. Not everyone's going to be able to raid with someone they disagree with, right? We live in a society where like you make anyone who thinks differently from you your enemy. Whereas like, you look back to the Greek days and like the public forum where like we actually welcomed difference of thought and we argued against each other. But now we feel personally attacked and we have all this like internal conflict in our society that it comes to this point where like it is an offensive thought to most people that you would even associate yourself or be around someone you disagree with or do not like, which is interesting because in a lot of other cultures around the world, this conversation and the context changes drastically based on your culture. So I can only speak for Western culture really because that's what I'm in, right? Um, but this is one of the things where like I don't think it's a men protect men thing. I think you're seeing a logic protects logic and emotions protect emotions and they're not meeting in the middle to find like that. Yes, this is the reality. Yes, this is what we would like changed. How do we get there? People don't know the answer. They've been struggling with this forever. So whenever you have this kind of discussion, most people would tell you like sure we can think up solutions but it's not easy, like you can't control people and you can't outcast everyone who's accused of something without some innocent bystanders getting caught in the crossfire. So how do you solve this problem? It's an unsolved problem by society, so some people on Twitter aren't exactly going to be able to solve it as much as they might think that they would have an answer or what have you. Like this is a problem that has not yet been resolved in greater society. So when we contextualize it for just Final Fantasy 14 in MMO, I can tell you this has been a thing in raiding in MMOs for decades. I mean, this was true in EverQuest, you know what I mean? But we have to contextualize it a little bit to say that like this is happening to every woman in every first world first raiding group ever is obviously untrue. To say that it happens to every woman in every raid group is also untrue, but that there is a lot of problems that women specifically deal with for being an attractive woman, or even just being a woman, right? Like people are because some guys are so desperate they're attracted to every woman, right? So it's one of those things where it's the nature of dealing with the opposite sex. And the thing is that um, as far as the harassment goes, women have it pretty bad, but we need to remember that harassment in general is like um, buying the right item in League of Legends, right? You're going to buy the item that hurts your opponent the most. Why? Because you want to win, right? You want to destroy them. So you're going to buy the gear, the weakness, the counter item that makes you win the match against them. That's very much how harassment works as well. The harasser picks the thing that they know will hurt the target the most. They pick the thing that's different about them. This is why you see a lot of men who are like disagreeable and, goal oriented and they're grinding and they won't like mentally they go into a state of like nothing anyone says will hurt me or prevent me from reaching my goal. And then they see competition and they say, I'm going to do whatever I can to beat that competition. If that competition is different than me, I'm going to point out the things that are different to stop that competition. So when that competition is a girl, what is the most obvious difference between a girl and a guy? The fact that they're a girl. It's an easy, low-hanging, low IQ fruit for a harasser to pick, so they pick that thing. If you're a guy dealing with a guy getting harassed, he's not going to harass you for being a guy. Why? Because you're both guys. It's hypocritical. It's kind of stupid, right? So they have to pick something else to harass you about. So, yes, men get harassed too. Everyone gets harassed. And the unfortunate thing is that you're usually picked for the things that are different about you. That's why we have things like racism. I hate you because you're different, right? So, of course, a woman going into a male kind of dominated space, if you have some emotionally immature or harassment type people because they're competitive and they want to wipe out the competition, you become an easy target because what's different about you is obvious. And we don't, again, we don't agree with that. We don't like that. That is just a thing that happens in social settings, and that's a lot of like women getting preyed upon. And that's why you get comments from men who have seen this happen time and time again, who care about women, who can act respectfully towards women, say you need to do your best to protect yourself, mentally fortify yourself. And this is what a lot of fathers try to teach their daughters, because dad's not always going to be there to protect you. You need to be strong and careful so that a bad thing doesn't happen to you, because at the end of the day, no one is coming to save you but yourself. I wish I had a button I could press to protect my daughter for the rest of her life from all of this stuff, but I don't have that. What can I do? I can only do what I can do. I'm human. I have to teach her and protect her and train her out of love so that something bad doesn't happen to her, or if it does, she's prepared for it and she can handle it. And that sucks, but that's the reality of living in a cruel world. That's the reality, you know? So the emotional side of me wants to say, I'll never let anything bad and we'll never agree, you know? Like, I'll put you in a room where you're safe from all bad people and you'll never talk to anyone, but I can't do that because it robs her of the joy of life, and living life is a risk, you know? So that's one of the things where why you get comments like you have to do these things if you want to survive these terrible people. And this is coming from someone who, like, I've been playing MMOs a long time. Like, I can tell you so many stories. Like, when I was 12, I ran into a situation where, like, well, actually, I think I was 14 and the girl was 12. But I ran into a situation where a girl was being sexually harassed by a 40-year-old, and he knew that she was a minor, and like I had to figure out how to save this girl because she didn't know how to save herself from this terrible situation. You know, I can tell you crazy stories I've seen over the years. It's not pretty. It's not pretty at all out there. And what can you do? Like, you have to protect yourself as best you can, and then you have to surround yourself. You have to build up a surrounding where people. You have to build a voice for yourself, right? Because if you don't build a voice for yourself and you speak out, you're not going to be believed. You're not going to be listened to. But if you can build yourself like a name amongst your friends, like people, your friends know who you are, and they know that you are a clear thinker, and they know that when you say something, like, you mean it. You're not a bullshitter. You know what I mean? Then that just lends all this credibility to you when you speak out. And we hate that it's that way. We hate that you need that. You know what I mean? To kind of like have a voice, you should just be able to be believed. But unfortunately, we live in an imperfect world where everything's broken, you know? And maybe we can do things to change that, right? But we can't hold every streamer or every content creator for an MMO accountable for having those solutions or being this Superman that can somehow save the day and do the perfect thing for everyone, you know what I mean, all the time. So I also think that's kind of unfair, because like you wouldn't be able to hold yourself accountable to those standards while doing everything else that you do either. So how can you put it on someone else? And that's why it's like a really difficult situation to navigate. Let's keep going. Arthur's is getting a lot of hate uh, for this situation. So this situation is Laristi was like on their stream raiding, and they made a mistake, and Arthur's like took the time on their stream to be like to like target them and say, look at this person on my in my raid. They did all this stuff. They messed up. They got blasted. And he was doing the content creator thing, which is, oh, sorry, I don't know why that popped up. Uh, they did the content creator thing, right, to get blasted, you know, and when that happens, um, you do like the acting thing. You're creating entertaining content, so you go a little hard on them. You be a little extra over the top, emotional and critical of them in front of all your viewers. And as a random raider, that can kind of be a little traumatizing for sure. But it's the reality of being on the internet, is like people can do that to you, and it might happen, and your mistakes might be busted. I have friends, both men and women, who have happened to be on big streamers' raid teams, like during their stream, and they messed up mechanics bad and got super blasted in front of everyone. You know what I mean? And they had to live with that, and kind of accept, like, yeah, I looked like an idiot there because I played like an idiot there. Um, And then there's repercussions. In some cases, you get hate from the hate from the followers and hate from the mob, and is that the responsibility of the streamer to like somehow control the people viewing them and like speak out? Is it really effective? And you can argue that point a lot. We do have a lot of data and research to show that ultimately the streamer is considered not responsible for their following. Um, Indirectly harassing when they themselves don't tell you to go harass. We've seen a lot of data points showing that when they speak out to say don't harass them, it's actually ineffective. There's a lot of studies for it. I wish I had them on hand and could just bring up everything I've ever read in my life. I can't. So I'm not asking you to take my word at it, but do some research. If you are someone who is curious on whether we should hold streamers accountable, but from my experience and from what I know, since you're listening to me, which you don't have to agree with or believe everything that I say, but we've seen this situation happen a lot. And typically, when we hold a streamer accountable, it hasn't changed anything. And typically, when they do take the extra steps to like say, don't harass this person, that person still gets harassed. It's just part of like being thrown into the limelight of the internet and understanding that everyone loves to punch down on the person who is different from them or has a weakness. Like people are cruel and they exploit your weaknesses. And again, it comes back to that like how can we fix this problem? Well, we can't control these people. We can only block them and like moderate them when we find them. We can only do our best to say, hey, don't harass. Which I agree, we should. If you're a big content creator, you should, encourage your following to not harass people. But again, are they actually like responsible for the actions of people that follow them? That I mean, we've run into the debate before where like if one of your followers like goes and like commits murder and they say, well, it's because I watch your stream, should you go to jail? Well, from what we've seen, no, you shouldn't. At least when it goes to the courts. So it's one of those like really hard situations again, and so everyone's going to have their own opinion of like how that should look. But in this situation, this person's upset and saying it's misogynistic, how you like called me out, and you tell me like you blasted me in front of your stream, and he's saying it's really not because you're a woman. It happens to everyone. Anyone would get blasted. That's just how online works. You got to grow up and deal with it because everyone else did. And people don't like this response because here's the thing about Arthur's like this guy is coming out and saying like, look, I don't have time for the emotions of the argument here. There's just a reality, and like that's the end of the line. We can talk about emotions all day long. I can make you feel better. I can use terminology that will make you feel better, but that's not going to change the reality that I blast everyone equally, and whether that's true or not, I don't know enough about Arthur's to tell you yes or no here. I don't know the guy, I've just seen a few videos and streams. I don't know, maybe it was misogynistic, maybe it wasn't, I wasn't there. But what I will say is that when it comes to this comment, right, I'm toxic and unfiltered, this does not scream misogyny. This screams you got blasted for messing up mechanics. So again, it's one of those things where like we do have to temper our emotions in order to argue for the sake of our emotions and for ourselves and to be heard and understand what exactly happened here. And I can't tell you, right? Maybe he did say something like, "Oh, you're a woman, and I'm only making fun of you because you're a woman." I can tell you, I've seen videos of Arthur's blasting randoms in PF that are not women, and it had nothing to do with gender. But maybe it did in this case. I don't know. But again, we shouldn't hate the entire tweet as a bystander just because of, well, this girl says it's misogynistic and this guy says it's not. I would have blasted anyone. Who's right? Who's wrong? Right? We don't know. We don't know. Wasn't there. There is a level of, yeah, you got to grow up and deal with being blasted because, like, yeah, that's part of being on the internet. Anyone in any community, it's the same as like walking down the street. If you get recorded by someone when you do something that you're embarrassed about, they can post it to the internet. You can't stop them. You have to just deal with that. There's nothing you can do. And if you call the police, what are they going to do? They're going to tell you there's nothing we can do. They're allowed to do that. You shouldn't have done the thing if you didn't want it to be online. That sounds harsh and critical, but that's the reality. Now, should it be that way? Should it not be that way? That's up for debate, but that's how it is right now. And so we have to learn how to deal with the right now at the same time of learning, well, how can we change it, right? That's kind of the duality of the situation we're in. So in this case, like, yeah, he's pretty blunt here. He's not arguing for the emotional side whatsoever, just the logic, just the outcomes of the now, here and now. He's just saying, look, I would have blasted anyone that happens. You can agree or disagree with blasting someone in that way, totally fine. I think that's fair for anyone to have an opinion there. But can you just jump to saying, like, blasting a girl from a random PF raid team for messing up mechanics is misogynistic? That would not be. Blasting her because she's a girl, that would be misogynistic. So we just have to keep in mind that this is an area where we don't really know what happened. But you're getting a lot of comments that's just like really toxic. This ain't it, chief. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're a misogynist and enable other bigots. And it's like, maybe it could be true, but you can't tell from these tweets. You can't like scientifically conclude, you know what I mean? And that's the thing that I guess we just need to understand is like, you're just being weird at this point. Yeah, so here's the thing from Arthur's. I've looked at some of his other tweets too. You can tell this guy he's older and he's really tired of the internet drama. He's really tired of like having to put in the extra effort to cater to um, the more sensitive side of the topic, which let's be objective here, like that does take emotional bandwidth, that does take effort, and it's understandable that you would get tired of that. You know what I mean? So is his responses super great? No. But again, that's why he's saying things like, yes, I'm being toxic. You know what I mean? And what he's saying that is like, I feel guilty for not having the emotional bandwidth here to cater to how you feel. Right now, I'm just so tired of this that I'm just going to be blunt and I'm just going to say how it is. And I'm not going to try to take the time to avoid being misinterpreted. I'm not going to take the time to make you feel better. I'm just going to say how it is. And that's what he means by being toxic. Does he actually care about those things? He might. He might still care about them and just not find it within himself to be able to deal with it right now. That's how I would look at it. Is that defending him? No. It's just explaining the thought process. And you can say that's not good enough, and that's totally fair. And you can say, oh, that's understandable, and that's totally fair. It's up to you, right? I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just explaining how these how people get to the point of typing what they type. You know what I mean? And then you can do with that however you would like. So looking at his tweets, he just seems tired. And the thing is these dramas always tend to like pop up whenever 14 is in a bit of a content drought, which I think is so interesting. That like uh, it seems like this could have been like a small contained issue where it was just like this one person hurt these people and these people got their resolution however they needed to, and that was it. But now it's become this greater thing where like a lot of people who are not involved are like really upset, and a lot of people who are not involved or are just making their thoughts known are getting attacked, and it's like this giant drama that just has blown up over time. So let's get some more tweets. Mr. Happy tweeted, I suspect this is uh, about the situation, but he says like Final Fantasy 14 isn't a date scene. Content creation isn't a date scene. Talk to people because you get along, not because you're trying to fuck them. It shocks me, and yet doesn't, that people do this shit nonstop. And he makes some good points here, although it's easy to misinterpret or like fill in the gaps. But what he's saying is like you shouldn't be playing the game with the intention. Like you aren't like hunting down women and trying to play with women just to date them. And you shouldn't be like only spending time with people to try and date them. I think that's kind of up for interpretation because like a lot of people do go on dates. Like you might work with a coworker that you try to spend some extra time with because you're kind of feeling them out and kind of seeing like, is this someone I could date? I kind of like them. I kind of like how I like a thing about them. I like their voice or I like how they look. So you might try to spend some more time with them and then decide, okay, I do want to pursue actually getting to know them. It's a very iterative and normal process. So when you end up raiding with a girl, that can be very normal too, right? I can tell you I've had plenty of relationships come from raids over the years. And some of them have been like, we actually moved across the country to live together and it lasted multiple years, stuff like that. Very normal. I have a plethora of friends who have been married 10 plus years that met by being on raid teams. So it's a normal thing. Um, but what he's saying here has a little bit more nuance to that, in that he's saying your intentions when joining these raids are to pursue these women regardless of how they feel. You know what I mean? Um, but you shouldn't like just show up to raid for the sole purpose of shopping around for a date. And there's a lot that goes into this because like a lot of people move at different paces and go through different phases of their life where like a lot of men, at least Western men, go through a hunting for a partner phase. They go through that. A lot of them do. And so whatever social circles you're in, that guy is on the lookout for his future wife. That happens a lot, you know? So if you're a raider, your eyes as that guy hunting for a wife will be open to be like, who's this girl? Could she be? Let me ask myself. And maybe you'll be like, nah, I don't want to jump to conclusions, and you'll be cool about it, but you'll be curious. And I think there's nothing wrong with that curiosity. So being like, yeah, I want to join this raid team over here a little more because there's some girls on it, and like maybe one of them could be my partner someday, versus, well, I could join this other raid team that has my bros, but like they're my bros. I'll play another game with them. So you could have that very normal mindset and have it twisted and misinterpreted into something way more like, I don't know, intentional and I forget the word that I'm looking for. Not insinuous, but insidious. Nah. Well, anyways, it's one of those things where like I think it's normal. I think it's normal to want to date people. It's normal to do activities to date people. Like a lot of girls will be like, I picked up pickleball. I don't want to play pickleball, but I'm looking for my husband. It's pretty normal. Like so, someone being like, well, I don't really want to raid with this group per se, but there's a girl that I think is kind of interesting. I might want to get to know her a little bit, spend some time, see if there's something there. I think that's kind of normal, and you would deal with that in any facet of life otherwise. It just leads to a lot of negativity because people are immature, so they get weird about it. They do weird things that aren't cool, or they don't handle rejection well, and that's kind of part of dealing with people as well. I've had girls come on to me during raids that it was kind of uncomfortable. And how did I resolve those situations? Keeping in mind, I'm not saying this is how everyone can. Don't get me wrong. I'm just relating to the story, relating to the situation as best as I can. And I had situations where like creepy older woman hit on me when I was like 15, 16, 17, relentlessly hitting on me and requesting that I do things, and I had to like laugh it off until I felt like, well, maybe this isn't a good environment for me. I had to talk to someone I trusted, to come to that conclusion. And I think that's a normal process. Yeah, that person shouldn't have put me in that situation for sure, especially if I was a minor. Um, but it's a reality, and I had to do my best to navigate it. And I don't have any like trauma or anything from it to this day. Like nothing lingers because you have to handle situations in life. You have to handle them, and so yeah. So fast forward, as an adult, having women hit on me in raids where I was just there to raid and I had no interest in that. Most of the time, when you set your boundary, like, yeah, they were respectful and they get embarrassed or they quit the raid team. I had a girl quit a raid team because I rejected her once. So there's just, what can you do? What can you do? And so for women, it can feel scary that you're dealing with guys. It can feel very scary and it's understandable and it's uncomfortable and nobody likes it. Nobody likes that it's this way. It shouldn't be this way, for sure, but it is just the nature of dealing with people and dealing with the fact that there's a lot of guys out there looking for their wife, and the reality is there's some immature guys. There's some immature guys or some like guys that don't have good social skills that do things or say things in a way that make you uncomfortable. And that guy might not be a bad guy. Some of them are. Some of them are very like they have bad intentions for you. It's kind of gross, kind of creepy, right? We get it, that's out there. But there's also guys who come across that way that don't intend to. They just have really bad social skills. All of that is out there. All of those people with all those different situations are out there, and we have to deal with it. So, what I recommend is doing some research for yourself if you feel like you want to prepare yourself for dealing with those situations. Have very fine boundaries, use strong language to protect yourself. And when people violate those boundaries, just like in a healthy relationship, what do? You can't control the other person, but you can walk away. And that's what we have to be comfortable doing. People are going to say really horrible things to you sometimes. We hate those people, right? People who are just toxic and aggressive and just saying hateful things that are really not acceptable, right? That's going to happen. We have to understand it. I've had stuff said to me, you know, um, and so I get it. I mean, I haven't had the girls' end, but I get that it's difficult. So again, I'm not relating my experience to be a one for one, but I am saying the strategies that I use for my situations will help you greatly with your situations because ultimately we have to admit that we can't control other people. We can only control ourselves. And in resolving these things in a healthy manner will make it so that you, as the female player who feels like it's difficult, can understand as yes, this is tiring, exhausting. Yes, there's a lot of awful people to deal with that will make you maybe not want to participate. But if your goal, if your objective is to say, I want to be a world first raider, you can do that without letting these things stop you, and you will find that group where you don't have to deal with it. It just takes work because not everyone in the world is a good person, and the majority of people do have good intentions, but the majority of people, even with good intentions, do bad things. Good people do bad things, right? So there's a lot of takeaway from this. Um, but as the female, if you're looking to have a healthy raid environment, I can tell you my static has 3 girls in it right now, I think, right? Yeah, 3. I hope they don't watch this and hear me say that. I'm so embarrassed. And as far as I know, like they have a great time and they've never had a problem. And so for you being competitive as a girl, I definitely hope that you don't let those kind of things stop you. A lot of us guys growing up have had to learn to not let things stop us, and we are kind of modeled from an early age to deal with that better. I would say it's kind of forced upon us. That's a difficulty of being raised as like a stereotypical guy in Western culture, in like the 90s and early 2000s. That's just a thing from the culture. So we've had to learn that lesson, and a lot of women didn't have to learn it. And so if you didn't have to learn it, and now suddenly you have to learn it to deal with the rating situation, you're like, wow, this shit sucks. Like people are mistreating me. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and they always pick at your weakest part, right? They always pick at the thing that hurts you the most, and it sucks. But as you kind of mature in dealing with your enemies, because let's not mince words here, those are your enemies. As you mature to deal with these people that want to hurt you, it hurts less when they say things because you acknowledge some very simple facts. This person's an idiot. They're just saying things. They have low IQ. They're just saying the easiest to grab insult, and now that I recognize that they're my enemy, I'm not going to let my enemy hurt me. You know what I mean? And you do your best with that. You still walk away sometimes, even as a guy being like, oh my God, dude, fuck. That hurts to hear that shit, even if it's from a random person. That happens, for sure. It's part of being human. We're not like immortal shields, but we do our best to protect ourselves by not accepting like the random criticisms from random people. It's kind of like a building up your hit points, in an MMO. Like when you level up, you get more hit points. This is building your emotional hit points up, not because you should have to. Believe me, it's a lot of work, and a lot of us have been doing it our whole lives because you deal with a lot of people that are out to get you. Just literally, like in the workplace, I can't tell you how many times I've been in my professional environment where it should be like HR friendly, you should be just free to work on yourself and your skills and your career, and you have people literally out to stop you from advancing, literally out to stop you from ever looking good because they think it makes them look good. And you have to learn to deal with that, knowing that it impacts the ability for you to provide for your family and for yourself and to have a good life. It makes you stressed and miserable and emotionally distraught, and you're forced to deal with those people, right? Because what did I say about a lot of guys earlier? Those competitive guys will destroy their competition at any cost, right? At any cost. That's just part of competitive environments. So, a lot of us have had to learn to deal with that, and what that has meant is strengthening our hit points, being prepared to receive words that hurt, but know that they're coming from people who don't matter and are of very little significance, and that I can just walk away from them. And it's a lot harder, of course, when you can't walk away, when it's like a job where you don't have another option readily available, you're like young in your career, maybe even if you're older in your career, because that has its own challenges too, that are different. And in a rating environment, just know you can always walk away. You can always find, there are groups, I promise you, there are groups, there are good people out there. I've met them. The world first rating community ultimately came down to just performance and competition, not social niceties, not normalies. And that's how it works too in the real world when it comes to like the high end, crazy, like we are making the best company, we are making the best company that ever lived that makes the most money the fastest possible. It's ruthless, man. It is ruthless out there. You work with people that you would like, I would never sit down and have tea with you, but I need to pay for my family. And eventually, people get burned out by those environments, and they eventually leave because why? It's not sustainable. So just know that you see these world first raiders that you might disagree with or say I don't like how they act. Totally fair, and just remember their way isn't sustainable, and they're cycling through friends very quickly. They're cycling through raid team members very quickly because they can't maintain them. Why? Because it's not sustainable. You can't be that way. So hopefully that helps contextualize the situation and why you do have like the logic side versus the emotional side and why everyone's really upset. Just know that a lot of these guys that are kind of coming out and telling it how it is don't necessarily intend for you to be hurt, don't necessarily intend for you to um, feel like you don't have a voice. They're just telling it like this is the reality and it sucks, but they agree that it sucks. They don't like it, right? And so they hear you, they see you, they are there with you while you're saying your piece and complaining. They're not saying maybe what you want to hear, which is the more like, oh my God, that's so terrible, the support side, because they're in problem solver mode. This is a big problem. So a lot of these guys are going to jump straight to, I wish I could solve this unsolvable problem. I don't know what the answer is. All I can do is prepare you. So they're trying to do you something good. They're trying to prepare you. Um, and a lot of people are getting really upset by that. They feel invalidated. Please don't feel invalidated when people do this for you because it shows that they care. They're not disagreeing with you. They're just simply saying like this sucks. It's a reality. There are damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. I'll probably catch a lot of flack for this, so please, be gracious in hearing me, and remember, everyone's always learning and growing all the time. So something said today could change in an instant, in a moment, and hopefully, we kind of learn to navigate these situations because this isn't new. Remember, none of this is new. I've seen this happen in MMOs from World of Warcraft, EverQuest. It happened in Star Wars: The Old Republic. I've seen it happen in Age of Conan, for as short-lived as that was. I've seen this happen a million times, and it's just one of those societal problems that like it sucks, and there's bad people out there, and we can't control them. So what do we do? And as much as our Final Fantasy part of the internet would like to shelter itself and like stay in control of its community, we've gotten so big over the last few expansions that we've start to see the results of what happens when an MMO gets truly gigantic. And this is what happens every time. So I'm sorry that this video is super boring to look at maybe visually. Thanks for listening to it all if you did. Um, Sorry I haven't put out much Blackmage content. Honestly, like I finished the Savage tier and I've just been kind of preparing for Ultimate. I don't really know what to make. I'm a terrible YouTuber. I don't know. Uh, but I hope this helps some people understand at least what's going on and some of the mindsets and kind of stances from people involved. And I might have gotten some of the stuff wrong. So it's what it is. I've been talking for an hour on a Saturday morning. I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope to cast some Fire Force later. And until next time, hey, good luck out there. It's a hard world. It's a hard world. Take care. This is an M.